They say some people disappear all at once. I didn't. I vanished slowly. So slowly that not even I noticed at first. My name is Claire. I'm 36. I live alone in a small blue house in Norwalk, Connecticut. I teach third grade at a public school. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, gentle, predictable. And honestly, I think I chose it because nothing in my childhood ever felt that way. I have a sister. Her name is Elise. She's 2 years younger than me, and she's the kind of person you remember after 5 minutes. Beautiful, loud, effortless. She laughs in rooms like she owns the air inside them, and somehow, people let her. Growing up, my parents never said they loved her more, but they didn't have to. I remember once, I think I was 9, I came home with a science trophy, regional level. I was so proud. I held it up at the dinner table with both hands, still warm from my grip. My dad glanced at it and said, "That's great, Claire. Now pass the salad." Elise came home the next day with a laminated certificate from her dance class. They took her out to dinner. I stayed home with a microwaved lasagna. I learned early that being good wasn't enough. You had to be shiny, loud, entertaining, or broken, but never invisible. And I was the quiet one, the helper, the one who didn't need anything. That's what they loved about me, I think, that I didn't ask for love. So I stopped asking. I brushed my own hair, did my own homework, learned to braid Elise's hair even when she yanked or kicked or rolled her eyes. By high school, I'd become an expert at shrinking, at making space, at playing support while Elise, well, she played the lead. It's funny, when you're cast in a family, you don't always realize it's a role. You just think it's who you are. But I was never the quiet one. I was just the one who learned not to scream. By the time Elise turned 22, she'd already been on TV twice. Local segments, one for a boutique fashion show, another for a real estate internship she'd landed through one of Dad's golf buddies. Meanwhile, I was working part-time at a daycare and going to school at night. No one asked about my thesis. No one ever came to see the little classroom I decorated with my own money. But they always had questions for Elise. Did you see her new headshots? She's got such presence. She's going places. And I believed it. I mean, how could I not? Elise glowed. She had that thing, the thing that makes strangers lean in closer and parents forget the other child sitting at the same table. I got good at clapping. I clapped for her college graduation, even though I had to take out a small loan to buy the dress I wore that day. The only one I've ever worn that cost over $200. I clapped when she moved to New York. I clapped when she came back 3 months later, crying in my lap because she'd maxed out her credit cards. No one clapped for me, but I kept clapping anyway. At some point, I became the one who had it all together, which is code for the one we don't check on, the one who answers calls at 2 a.m., the one who keeps secrets. Like the time Mom called and said, "Claire, sweetie, I know Elise is staying with you this month. Just don't make her feel bad, okay? She's going through a really hard time." Elise was going through a hard time every year. A breakup, a bankruptcy, a business idea gone wrong, and somehow, it always landed on me. But I never said no, because good daughters don't say no. Good daughters understand. They carry, they absorb, they let it pass through them like fog and smile through the static. I thought if I just stayed steady long enough, someone would notice. Someone would say, "Hey, this is too much for you." No one did. Not when Elise totaled my car and blamed a pothole. Not when she moved out and left me with 3 months of unpaid rent. Not when Mom called and said, "She's just trying to find her footing. You have a heart, don't you?" I didn't have a heart. I was the heart. And by the time I realized it was breaking, It had already shattered quietly, inside my own chest. The first time I thought about cutting contact, I was standing in the cereal aisle. Kroger. Friday. 6:15 p.m. I had Elise on speaker. She was crying again. Something about a job that wasn't a fit, and how her boss was jealous, and how maybe she'd just take some time off and realign. She said the word realign like it was a yoga pose, like it didn't mean unpaid rent and a fridge full of my groceries. As she talked, I stared at a box of frosted mini wheats and thought, if I keep doing this, I will never get out. But I said what I always said. It's okay. You'll figure it out. I heard myself say it like someone reading a script. Flat, hollow, tired. That night, I sat in my car for 30 minutes before going inside. The porch light flickered. It had been doing that for months. I could have fixed it. I fix everything. But that night, I didn't. I just watched it blink like a dying heartbeat and imagined walking away. Just walking. But how do you walk away from people who say they love you? How do you say no to your mother when she calls you the stable one? How do you hang up on your sister when she says, I just need you right now? How do you admit out loud that the people you love most have made you feel disposable? I couldn't. Not yet. So I did what I always did. I swallowed it. The anger, the grief, the unspoken why me? I folded it up into a tight little square and tucked it in between the bills I paid on time. The birthday cards I remembered. The dishes I washed that weren't mine. Love, in my family, was a transaction. You give. They take. You stay quiet. They stay comfortable. And if you ever said it hurt, you were the problem. So I smiled. I poured Elise another glass of wine, and I told myself, this is just how families are. But in the back of my mind, a new voice had started whispering, one I'd never heard before. It said, what if they don't love you? What if they just love what you give them? And once you stop giving, what then? It started with a phone call I missed. One Tuesday morning, in between math lessons and stapling construction paper stars, I glanced at my phone and saw 6 missed calls from my dad. That was strange. My dad doesn't call unless it's about taxes or a lease. Sometimes both. When I finally called back during lunch, he sounded off. Too calm. Too rehearsed. Claire, sweetheart, he began, like I was already in trouble. There's something going on with the bank, and I don't want you to panic. My stomach turned. Bank? He kept talking, circling, softening, but I only heard one thing clearly. They're saying your name is on a loan. I stood up from my desk, walked out into the hallway, and shut the classroom door. Because I knew. I didn't have all the details yet, but I knew. Elise, I said. My voice didn't even shake. It was more like resignation, like watching a wave hit the sand and realizing you've forgotten how to run. Dad didn't answer. Instead, he sighed. That same tired, expectant sigh I'd heard my whole life. The one that meant, don't make this harder than it already is. She didn't mean to, he said finally. She was trying to start something new, a business, I think. She thought you'd say no, so she didn't ask. $600,000. That's what the final number came to. Lines of credit, loans, cards. All in my name. All signed with a forged signature I later learned she practiced using old birthday cards I had sent her. And do you know what my parents said? Not, we're going to help you fix this. Not, she's gone too far. What they said both of them on speakerphone that night, was this: "Claire, can't you just let it go? Just let it go." Like it was a sweater I let her borrow. Like I hadn't spent 15 years bailing her out in quiet, invisible ways. Like I hadn't paid her rent, fed her, listened to her cry, watched her fall apart over and over and over. I was shaking, not crying, not yet, just vibrating with a rage I didn't even recognize. Like it wasn't mine, but had been passed down through generations of women who were told to be nice while they were bleeding. "I could go to jail," I said, and my mom, my mother, actually laughed. Not a full laugh, just a scoff. Like I was being dramatic, like my life wasn't worth the mess it would cause if we made this public. She said, "Elise didn't mean to hurt you. You know her heart." And I think that was the moment I stopped being their daughter. Right there, on the phone, while standing barefoot in my kitchen with last night's dishes still in the sink. Because I realized they didn't know mine. After that call, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I kept thinking, this can't be real. $600,000 doesn't just happen. There must be some mistake, some wrong number, some glitch. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. One Elise made, and my parents allowed. I started digging. I called the bank. I filed a police report. I sat with an attorney for the first time in my life, a woman with short gray hair and kind eyes who looked at the paperwork and said quietly, "Claire, this didn't happen overnight. These accounts go back over 4 years. 4 years." While I was waking up early, budgeting every penny, paying down my student debt, Elise was pretending to be me, living under my name, my credit score, my signature. She'd opened credit lines using my social security number. She had checks printed with my name. She'd even emailed one of the banks pretending to be me and signed off, "Thanks so much, Claire." And she added a smiley face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something, but instead I sat in my car with the engine running and just shook. Like my body didn't know where to put all the grief. Because that's what it was. Grief. Not just for the money, though that was massive, but for the betrayal. For the years of lies, of pretending we were sisters, when really, I'd been her safety net, and she'd been cutting the ropes the whole time. When I confronted her, she didn't even cry. She just stood in my doorway, arms folded, eyes glassy with indifference. "You don't understand," she said. "No," I said back. "I do. That's the problem." She tried to spin it, told me it was just supposed to be a short-term thing, that she had plans to pay it back, that things got out of hand. But there was no apology. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry I did this to you." Instead, she blamed me. "You were always so perfect," she snapped. "Everything always worked out for you. You wouldn't even notice the difference." Wouldn't notice? I had ulcers from stress. I had panic attacks when the phone rang with unknown numbers. I had nightmares where I was drowning in paper, statements, bills, warnings, red stamps, and still, I hadn't told anyone. Not friends, not coworkers, no one. Because deep down, I still believed. If I made this real, then it would really be happening. And even worse, it would mean my family had never protected me, that they'd chosen Elise, over and over, even now, and I wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. The breaking point didn't come with yelling. No slammed doors, no dramatic fight, no one threw a wine glass. It came in silence. It came on a Thursday, 4 months after I found out. I'd been keeping everything hidden, still going to work, still showing up for meetings, still texting, "I'm fine," to the two friends who noticed I was quieter than usual. I was anything but fine. My credit was destroyed. I couldn't refinance my mortgage. One bank froze my checking account because they flagged the fraud investigation as internal family dispute. The attorney told me I'd have to choose, press charges and sever the relationship for good, or absorb the debt and hope for leniency from the creditors. And when I brought this up to my parents, finally, after weeks of silence, they didn't even flinch. "You want to send your sister to prison?" my mom said, horrified. As if I were the criminal. As if protecting myself was a kind of betrayal. "She's family," my dad added. "That's what family does. We forgive." But what they meant was, you stay quiet. You absorb the damage. Again. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of red wine and the letters from the banks spread out on the table like a crime scene. There were 10 of them. 10 envelopes. 10 tiny deaths. It was quiet. A soft summer night. You could hear the cicadas. And I remember staring out at the street and thinking, if I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice? Or would they just say, "She was always the strong one"? That's when something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not violently, just split. Like an old tree finally giving in to rot no one saw coming. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I got up, went inside, opened my laptop, and I started writing an email. Subject line, "This is the last thing I will ever do for you." It was addressed to all 3 of them, Elise, Mom, and Dad. I wrote it calmly, line by line, no caps lock. No exclamation points, just the truth. I told them what they'd done, what they'd allowed, what it had cost me, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I told them I was done. No more favors. No more quiet compliance. No more bleeding for a family that never once tried to stop the wound. I told them if Elise didn't begin repaying the debt through legal mediation within 30 days, I would press charges, and I would not apologize for doing so. Then I ended with one sentence. You don't get to keep hurting me and still call it love. I hit send, and for the first time in my adult life, I exhaled. They didn't respond right away. Not for hours, not for days. And when they finally did, it wasn't with an apology. It wasn't even with fear. It was with anger. My mom wrote first, a long email, paragraphs and paragraphs. But none of it was about the damage, the betrayal, or the debt. It was about tone, my lack of compassion, my coldness. She called me cruel. Cruel for drawing a line. Cruel for saying no. My dad followed up with a voicemail. He sounded tired. He said he was disappointed things had to get this far, that families don't involve lawyers, that I'd always been the better one, the stronger one. He said it like a compliment, but I heard it for what it was. We counted on you to stay quiet. Elise never said a word. Not an email, not a call, not a single text. She just vanished. And maybe that's what broke me the most. Not the money, not the credit score, not even the years I'd spent being their emotional mule. It was the realization that I could burn in front of them, and they'd complain about the smoke. I waited. 30 days passed. My lawyer filed the complaint. I pressed charges. I didn't tell anyone at work. Didn't explain why I looked paler, thinner, brittle. Didn't say a word when I had to dip into my savings to cover legal fees. I just kept showing up. To my job, to my life, to myself. And slowly, painfully, the silence from my family became louder than any of their old words. They stopped calling, stopped sending birthday cards, stopped inviting me to holidays. And I stopped hoping they would. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about betrayal by your own blood. The wound isn't just in what they did. It's in what they won't do. They won't admit it, won't own it, won't even look you in the eye. And so you learn to stop asking. You stop begging to be seen. You bury the version of yourself who thought love meant sacrifice, and you begin to wonder, what if love is something else entirely? What if love is peace? The months after the fallout felt hollow, not peaceful, not triumphant, just empty. Like standing in the ruins of a house you didn't know was on fire until the walls were ash. You breathe, you blink, you don't know where to sit anymore because everything you built your life around is gone. I didn't talk to anyone for a while. There was this heavy fog around me. Even the smallest decisions, what to eat, what to wear, whether to text a friend back, felt like climbing a hill in wet sand. But every now and then, I'd catch a moment, a flicker, the sun hitting the floor just right in my living room, the silence of a morning where no one was asking for something, the way my body softened when I realized I didn't have to brace for someone else's disaster anymore. Those moments were small, but they were mine. I started journaling again, not because it fixed anything, but because I needed a place to put the words I couldn't say out loud. Sometimes I wrote letters I never sent, to Elise, to my mother, to the girl I used to be, the girl who thought love meant loyalty at any cost, even the cost of herself. I wrote to her a lot. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you," I wrote once. "You deserved better. From all of us, especially me." There was no dramatic healing, no grand epiphany, just tiny moments of self-trust rebuilding themselves. One of the biggest was when I applied for a new credit card. In my name, this time. Mine alone. It got denied. But I didn't cry. I just stood at my kitchen counter, tore the letter in half, and said quietly, "It's okay. We'll get there." We, me, and the woman I was becoming. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in my own skin. It was a random Tuesday when I realized no one was coming to save me. And strangely, I didn't want them to. I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, grading spelling tests, when I overheard two women at the next table. One of them said, "I used to think keeping the peace meant I was strong, but all I was doing was shrinking." I nearly dropped my pen. That sentence, it echoed in my ribs, like someone had opened a door I didn't know was locked inside me, because that had been my entire life, shrinking, apologizing for things that weren't mine, absorbing other people's chaos like it was some sacred duty. And now that there was no one left to absorb, I was finally seeing the outlines of my own shape. It started with small things. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I changed my locks. I stopped signing birthday cards with fake smiles and phrases like "miss you so much" when I didn't. I let silence be the response. I booked a solo trip to the Berkshires for fall break. Stayed in a little cabin with creaky wood floors and no Wi-Fi. Spent 3 days hiking and drinking tea and crying under quilts. No audience, no explanations. Just me and the version of myself I'd silenced for 3 decades. She was quiet, but she wasn't weak. She was tired, but she was mine. I began to picture a future that didn't include their voices in my head, didn't include guilt as my morning alarm, didn't include shrinking to make room for anyone else's lies. And little by little, that future stopped feeling like fiction. One of my students asked me recently, "Miss Claire, do you have a sister?" I paused. The old me would have nodded automatically, would have smiled and said, "Yes, she's younger than me." But instead, I just said, "I used to, but sometimes family is more about who shows up for you and who you become without them." He blinked, nodded like he understood, and went back to coloring his volcano. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer pretending. I wasn't surviving my life anymore. I was living it. People ask me now, the ones who know pieces of the story, if I ever forgave them. And the truth? I don't think forgiveness looks the way we're taught. It's not one big gesture. It's not a phone call or a family reunion or some shaky hug in a hospital hallway. Sometimes forgiveness is just refusing to carry the weight anymore. Not because they deserve peace, but because I do. I still get the occasional text from my parents, mostly around the holidays. Just enough to say they tried. Never enough to actually change. Elise never reached out. Last I heard, she moved to Florida. She's dating someone older. Her Instagram is full of borrowed quotes about healing and rebirth. But I don't look anymore. Not out of anger, but because some chapters don't deserve rereading. Instead, I've built something new. Quiet. Honest. Small, but sacred. I adopted a rescue dog named Penny. She's 10 years old, grumpy, and follows me everywhere. She trusts me like I never trusted anyone growing up, completely without question. I volunteer at a women's shelter twice a month. Sometimes I just sit and listen. Sometimes I help someone write a resume or file for a restraining order. Sometimes I just hold their hand while they cry. I don't give advice. I don't say, "You'll be okay." I say, "I believe you, and you don't deserve to stay in a place that only loves what you can give." Because that's what I wish someone had told me. And now, years later, when the dust has settled, when the debt has mostly been handled, when the loneliness isn't sharp anymore, I see it clearly. I was never the weak one. I was the one who stayed, who carried, who tried to make broken people feel whole without asking for anything in return. But now, I ask. Now I choose. Now I live like I deserve the same kindness I so freely gave. And when people ask me who I am, I don't say Elise's sister. I don't say the good daughter. I don't say the one who kept the peace. I say, I'm Claire, I'm whole, and I'm finally mine.